So hello and welcome to today's Info2Go webinar. My name is Annie Gaines and I'm the Continuing Education Consultant here at the Idaho Commission for Libraries, located in chilly but sunny Boise, Idaho. Our webinars and other continuing education opportunities are funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Everyone is muted, and we encourage you to use the chat feature to ask questions and discuss with other attendees. As you exit the webinar, you'll be prompted to complete an evaluation. As always, we appreciate your honest feedback. Today's webinar is a presentation by 3 Boise State University faculty librarians who are doing the complex work of teaching college students how to critically engage with artificial intelligence. With us today are Anders Tobiasen, Georgianne Kershaw, and Lizzie Borges from the Boise State University Albertsons Library. Take it away.
All right, thanks. I'm going to share my screen and we will get going. Can everybody see my slides, hopefully? All right, so we're just going to start out by introducing ourselves a little bit. So I'm going to go first. I'm Anders Tobiasen. I'm the Multimedia Development and User Experience Librarian and an Assistant Professor at Boise State. My degrees are from UMass, University of Massachusetts, and the University of Wisconsin, and I actually hold a PhD in music theory, as well as a master's in library science. I'm also a singer and have performed with Portland Opera and Opera Idaho. I love to garden, and I think one of the most important gifts I can give my kids, which I have 2 of them, is knowing how to grow their own food and where their food comes from. We'll talk about why I'm a Luddite at the end of the presentation, but I encourage you all to read up on what the real definition is of that as you can. My thing, as it were, with AI is to foster a critical and ethical engagement with it, and this can be very much mean deciding not to use it. The key is critical engagement. So I'll pass it over to Georgianne.
Hello and welcome. My name is Georgianne Kershaw, and I'm the Head of Instruction and Research Services at Albertsons Library at Boise State. I have been in libraries for a long time. I started out with my training at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and spent a long time in Illinois, so I'm a little jealous of all the snow that you all are talking about in the Midwest. But I do love it here in the Treasure Valley of Idaho, the Boise area. And I'm a dog owner. I have a big Great Dane. I love to bicycle, hike, travel, and I'm really passionate about helping students engage with information in critical ways. And I'll turn it over to Lizzie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lizzie Borges. I'm an assistant professor as well. I'm the teaching and learning librarian here at Boise State. Before this, I was the online learning librarian at San Francisco State University. But even before that, I was a middle school teacher, and then I made a career transition and got my MLIS at San Jose State University. In my personal life, I'm a mystery lover and fitness enthusiast and a hiker and walker, a little bit more walking these days. I have a 4-month-old son and a toddler, so hikes are a little more challenging. Professionally, I'm really interested in first-year experience and student engagement, as well as the topics that my colleagues mentioned. So our plan for today, we already did our introductions, and thank you to those of you who have put your introduction in the chat. If you haven't already, we would love to hear where you're from and tell us a little bit about that weather. No one who I've seen who's coming from like Florida or Hawaii with some really warm weather. So seems like we all have some kind of winter weather happening. So after this, we are going to share a definition of information literacy and learn a little bit more about your context. So what you're doing around generative AI and information literacy at your institutions. Then we'll share our foundational principles, talk about how this all started and what we've done so far at Boise State. And we'll end with our final thoughts and some time for Q&A.
All right, so one of the things we like to do, and we can do this in the chat, is we would love to know what other people's thoughts and everybody here's thoughts are on generative AI and information literacy. So since we often talk about information literacy without defining it, we thought we would ask ChatGPT for a definition of it, and this is what it generated. So it said, or it generated, Information literacy is the ability to locate, evaluate, and use information effectively and ethically. It involves critical thinking skills to assess the credibility and relevance of information from various sources and applying it appropriately in decision-making, problem-solving, or knowledge creation. So that was what ChatGPT 4.0 gave Georgianne. So with that in mind, we would love people to put in the chat and we will try to respond a little bit. How have you engaged with AI? What are your thoughts about AI and information literacy? And even more importantly, what's happening at your library? Is anything happening at your library? What are librarians doing regarding generative AI and information literacy around you? So we'll kind of give everybody a minute to kind of get their thoughts together, and then we'll see what we can respond to. Yeah, Dina, we'll talk a little bit more about how that environmental impact stuff is really out of what the conversation is and how important that is in a little bit. AI petting zoo, that's cool. This is great. Thank you for everybody. Yeah, I actually have a friend who's at Disney World. He's wearing like a winter jacket. So yeah, I think it's cold in Florida too. Well, great. Thank you for putting all that in. And keep doing it. We will keep looking at the chat and we would love to answer questions and stuff like that at the end. I think all of you have really good stuff to say, and I'm excited that you're all engaged with it, obviously, since you're here. But I hope that you can get something out of this as we talk about it a little bit more about what we've been doing. And I'm going to turn it over to Georgianne to talk about foundational principles so that we can get going and do a little bit more. All right.
All right. Before we talk about the specifics of our experience, we wanted to share the foundational principles from which we approach this topic and our work with AI. We believe that information literacy skills are durable or life skills. Throughout our lives, they help us more responsibly navigate and participate in the world. They make us better citizens. That's why we view helping people develop their own information literacy skills as critical work that we do. Second, we believe that we can't use generative AI responsibly without information literacy skills. In order to use AI responsibly, we need a basic understanding of how it works. We need knowledge of its strengths and limitations, and we need skills for evaluating its accuracy and identifying its biases. Third, we believe that generative AI gives librarians, that's all of us, an opportunity that we really shouldn't miss. We can use it to teach and reinforce information literacy skills by teaching folks techniques for critically evaluating and fact-checking the responses that generative AI gives them. And finally, librarians are just good at this work. That's why we believe that all of us librarians should be leading or at least participating in these conversations at all levels within our environments. Anders is going to talk about how we got started with this work at Boise State.
Great. Thanks, Georgianne. Yeah, those are our foundational principles. And I really do want to reinforce that I think we can't emphasize enough how much we think that librarians and information literacy are really key to engagement with generative AI. All the things we talk about and have traditionally talked about are all present in our issues with generative AI. So I'm going to start a little bit about what I've done or why I came to this work, and then a little bit more about what we've done at Boise State. So I've actually been interested in issues related to bias in AI for a very long time. All of the issues that we see currently in generative AI have actually been known about AI, artificial intelligence, for a very long time. We just kind of now see them much more in the public eye. And I've been very interested for a long time about how theory or theories privilege one type of experience over another and how this is often biased toward the dominant theory. So we see this across the board in generative AI on a regular. And if you have never read Race After Technology by Dr. Ruha Benjamin, I would highly recommend it. It'll probably change your life. It'll probably really give you a lot to think about with generative AI, but also a lot of other things. And it's about 6 years old, but she also has another recent book called Imagination, a manifesto that I would love to see more adopted as we begin to think about generative AI and information literacy. We have a LibGuide here at Boise State that I originally created in Portland State called Race, Technology, and Justice. And it's got a lot of great resources on it. It's a little old, but it also is sort of the foundation of the way we think about this stuff. If you don't follow Joy Buolamwini and the Algorithmic Justice League, please do. And then in general, I think justice and tech, and especially generative AI, are something we all as librarians need to start paying attention a lot more to. All right. So what happened in 2023, right? So in spring 2023, ChatGPT came out and kind of did what it did. I won't say it blew up the world because, well, I won't. So an ad hoc group of folks came together at Boise State to form what is called the AI in Education group at the request of the president and provost. Originally, it was just volunteer. It was people just trying to get a handle on this, just trying to figure out what we needed to do as a university to support our students, support our instructors, support everybody, right? So originally there weren't any librarians on it. Partially that was a bandwidth issue. Partially there was a lot of transitions going on in our library, so we weren't there. Yeah, writing. We'll talk about that. And in fall 2023, I volunteered, and our dean agreed for me to be part of the group. So it's actually a committee of equals, all co-chairs. We don't have a chair of the committee. And I think it's really important that we've set it up this way because we all have very, very, very different takes on generative AI. And by making it a committee of equals, we all feel like our voices are heard and the stuff we put out really reflects that diverse viewpoint on generative AI. In fall 2023, the structure became a little more solidified. So there's now 4 subcommittees essentially on generative AI on our campus. And we also added more deliberate representation from across the university. Instead of just being volunteer, we really started to work towards having who should be here, who needs a voice. So we've got an instructor from computer science. We have the person who runs our UF 200 program in general education. And we really sort of started to get a solid committee structure going. And we really redid our website. So if you go to the boisestate.edu/AI-in-education, and I'm one of the 3 admins for that, we really streamlined it to get it focused on what we need it to be. So it's the place to go for any information about what we're doing at Boise State. And in fall 2024, this changed to the AI and Teaching and Learning Committee. we were charged with supporting instructors and students in learning about and using generative AI tools in the classroom. We've created updated syllabus statements, led conversations across campus on generative AI. So we actually have met with approximately 40% of the departments on campus to hold 30-minute sessions, listening sessions, essentially. We've held summits. So we had a pretty big summit recently on curricular development, and are developing an AI champions model. So we're going to have some funding related to AI champions in the classroom with people who are currently doing a lot of great work related to generative AI. I've also created a statement on the use of AI detection tools in teaching, and I would love to see it that go a little more viral than it has, so to speak, because it's really, really excellent. It's on our website, and I would encourage you to check it out. We are really leading the conversation on the ethical use of AI in teaching and learning, and we're making sure that as librarians, I have a voice. We also have on our other committee, we have another librarian. So Ellie Dworak, who's our data services data librarian, research data librarian, sorry. She is actually the co-chair of the AI and research subcommittee. So we've got librarians across the board on the major committees related to teaching and learning and research at our university. And Yitzi Paul and Ellie and some other folks from around campus have been leading prompt engineering workshops all over the place. And they're really well attended and really, really great. And they're actually presenting at computers and libraries doing the same kinds of things. The real key here, the real key here is that librarians are really leading conversations. So about critical and ethical use on our major committees. We're not just sidelines, but we've become an integral part of the process of engaging with generative AI at Boise State. Information literacy skills, as we said before, are vital to this engagement. And so we're really able to show up and lead in order to help our students and instructor colleagues in this realm. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Georgianne to talk about one of our first efforts.
Yeah, so because we were part of these early conversations, in fall 2023, we were asked to collaborate with the Dean of Students Office and our eCampus staff to develop an AI literacy and academic success course in Canvas. So together with the Dean of Students Office and eCampus, we remixed a University of Maryland course to make it fit Boise State. This asynchronous online course is designed to educate students about generative AI and give them skills for using it responsibly. Several of our librarians worked to revise the second module in the University of Maryland course so that it aligns with our approach to teaching information evaluation. We teach the process of lateral reading. So the revised module teaches students to use lateral reading techniques to evaluate AI-generated content. And if you aren't familiar with lateral reading, it just means that you open another tab in your browser to search for information that helps you either confirm or disprove the content's accuracy. So in the module, after we introduce students to lateral reading, we then demonstrate how to use it to fact check a response that ChatGPT gave us when we prompted it to write a 5-paragraph essay about the role of animals in Boise State sports culture. So we take the response that we got from ChatGPT, and by reading laterally, we show that while several of the details in the response are accurate, ChatGPT incorrectly equated the Denver Broncos mascot that's named Thunder with the Boise State Bronco. We also show that one of the sources ChatGPT listed as a reference for its response doesn't exist. We have two main goals for this module. First, we want to teach the importance of checking the accuracy of generative AI outputs. And second, we want to reinforce that durable information literacy skill of lateral reading that we teach in multiple places in our instruction program. As of this week, we've had 647 people enroll in the course, most of them students. Now, students self-enroll in this AI literacy and academic success course, sometimes as a requirement in their academic integrity process with the Dean of Students Office. So it's a little punitive for them. But also they enroll sometimes because a professor is requiring them to take the course for a larger course that they're taking that semester. A small number of faculty and staff have also enrolled because they were just interested or wanted to see what their students were learning. Upon completion, everyone receives a certificate that's valid for 6 months. So we expect that they'll have to come back to it and redo it after that time period. Now Lizzie's going to talk about where we're teaching the largest number of students about generative AI.
So as Georgianne said, our next step in teaching students about generative AI was to consider how we could reach even more than we already were with the AI literacy and academic success course. And the place that we thought it was going to be most impactful to do this was in our Research and Critical Inquiry micro course, or the RCIM. This is an asynchronous online course required in University Foundation's 100 and 200 classes. So those are general education classes, and they're usually taken by first year or lower division students, although some students take them a little later in their college career. So the Research and Critical Inquiry micro course launched in 2018, and it enrolls over 4,000 students per year. And actually, we just finished compiling our statistics for last semester, and we had over 2,000 students take it in fall 2024, which was our highest number yet for a single semester. In the course, it introduces students to information literacy concepts and durable skills for finding and evaluating information. So lateral reading is one of those skills that we also teach students in this course. It includes 7 modules and 2 librarian graded assignments, and it takes students about 3 to 4 hours to complete. In fall 2023, we started to see AI-influenced assignment submissions. And based on that, and also our desire to teach students more about generative AI, we started having conversations with our University Foundation's administration. And those affirm the need for teaching students about generative AI. So the administrators who manage the University Foundation's courses, and also the University Foundation's faculty were really eager for something to help them teach their students about generative AI. And once again, the Research and Critical Inquiry micro course is the ideal place to introduce students to generative AI. We're already teaching durable information literacy skills that are applicable. And also, like I said, this is a really wide-reaching course. So we saw this as a way to reach as many students as we possibly could as early on in their Boise State careers as we could. So as they're starting at the university, as they are, being introduced to college level work, starting to think about their majors, we felt like this is a really important time to reach them. And we also viewed University Foundations as a great way to set a foundation that would reach across the disciplines. So University Foundation courses they're on all different subjects. They come from all different disciplines. And so we felt like this was a really good way to start that conversation that would maybe become more subject specific as students progressed farther into the discipline as they decided their majors. So we revised the course over the summer for the fall 2024 semester. We added content introducing generative AI, so how it works, positives and negatives, and we asked students to use lateral reading techniques to fact-check AI-generated content. So here I want to say that we built off of a lot of the work that was done for the AI literacy and academic success course, but we wanted to be sure that we weren't just duplicating everything. So while there is a little bit of overlap, I think one of the videos is the same, and some of the basic information that we share is the same. we wanted to make sure that we weren't being repetitive. So we wanted to be building on that work because there are many students who are going to take both. So we have instructors who assign the AI literacy and academic success course. And also, like we said, thousands of students take the micro course every year. So we want to make sure that we are building on what we've done and reiterating important concepts, but not just doing the same thing. So here, collaboration with University Foundations Administration was key as well, because they actually required their UF instructors to take the revised Research and Critical Inquiry micro course themselves. And we think that was a great experience because then they were able to see how we were teaching students about generative AI so that they could build upon those lessons in their courses. And we had, like I said, we had over 2,000 students complete the entire micro course in the fall. We actually had 2,335 students complete the AI module in the fall. There are a couple hundred more who completed that module because not everyone passed the final assignment at the end, but we were really excited about this broad reach. Like we said, we feel like this is a really great foundation for students as they're coming into the university, and we hope to build on it in our own work. And we also hope that teaching faculty across campus are building on it as well.
All right. So as Lizzie said, we're doing a lot of sort of building on our own work and building on the work that we're doing across campus. And one of the things that's really important by having librarians on the major committees, in the room where it happens, if you get it, is that we are given or find opportunities that maybe we would not have if we had not been in that room. So one of those opportunities is actually what Georgianne and I just finished teaching for the first time this fall and are teaching again starting next week, is we actually created a 1-credit course called AI, Information Literacy, and You. So how this came about is that our College of Innovation and Design here proposed that we create a AI for All certificate. So we have a lot of certificates on campus, but this is a kind of this was the first go at kind of like a AI, generalized AI certificate on campus. It's actually 3 courses. So the first one is our course, which I'm going to talk about a lot in a little while. The second is a required course called Philosophy in a Datafied World. And then the idea originally was that students then could take a third course from a list that's in their major. So, or somewhere close to their major, right? So the idea being that the certificate isn't just like a general overview, but that their final thing is going to be something that they will use as they go out into the world, right? So currently there are courses in computer science, nursing, education, writing is starting to develop some. We've got a big list that we're hoping to get all approved as part of this final course. And College of Innovation and Design also developed a final course, an asynchronous online course, so that we have kind of a bunch of different options for people. And that means that there are currently 2 options. There's a fully online version of this certificate. So you can take all 3 courses. So you can take ours, Philosophy in a Datafied World, and the CID course, fully online, asynchronously, and get your certificate. The other option is you can take our course, which is currently fully online. You could take Philosophy in a Datafied World fully online, or actually there's an in-person version of it, and then take one of these final in-person courses. So we really set the foundation for this course and for the AI certificate on campus, which we think is really, really important. So the certificate officially goes fully live in next Monday, but we actually got to do a pilot run this fall, which was really awesome. The goal eventually is to have both a fully online option and maybe someday a more in-person option. As I said, many of the final courses are in person, and the philosophy course can be in person, so it would make sense if we could offer somehow. But given bandwidth issues, we may not. This was really reinforced this fall. One of the things we discovered is that students would really benefit from a 15-week in-person option. We had students often commenting on the workload for a 1-credit class being a lot without understanding that it was a condensed timeline, so it was functionally 2 credits, right? Because it's currently totally asynchronous, online, 7 weeks. So it's 2 modules a week, which means it's quite a bit of work. And we worked really hard to get this certificate approved really quickly and went through the state board, all the official channels. And one of the things we were really excited by was that it was an excellent place to look at teaching a 4-credit course out of the library. So our library hasn't in a while taught a 4-credit course. And even when we did, they were sort of basic information literacy skills, right? So our dean is very interested in this kind of work as librarians. And we felt it was a great way to show that librarians don't just teach basic information literacy, but actually can use information literacy principles to teach about a variety of information subjects. And that we can really lead and give people a foundation for dealing with generative AI. So in fall 2024, so second half of fall 24, we had 6 students finish the course and 1 is still in progress. So we had pretty decent enrollment for us anyway. We have the same thing in the spring. We actually have 7 people starting next week. We just emailed them. And our course starts not with teaching students how to use the tools, but actually how to critically engage with it. So the first 2 weeks are all about bias and ethics. So they're all about critically engaging with issues related to generative AI. And so the first module does sort of ask them to sign up for ChatGPT and Gemini. But the second is on ethics and uses the framework of design justice and environmental harm to talk about ethical issues in generative AI. Then the third module takes on bias, and we actually have them play a really fun game where they learn not about necessarily racial bias, but bias in general in a hiring system, in an automated hiring system. So we got students really thinking about this. And one of the things we try to do is we build a lot of time in for reflection. So we have discussion board posts every module. We ask for a lot of writing. It puts a lot of onus on us to read that writing, but I think it's really important. And then we finally introduce lateral reading in the 4th module. So we basically talk about information literacy for the generative AI age. So we introduce lateral reading, and then we have them use lateral reading techniques to fact check generative AI responses. So they really get that foregrounded as opposed to learning how to mess around with the tools first. We really want to ground them in a critically and ethically engaged viewpoint rather than just first learning how to use the tools. So we then cover prompt engineering and actually working with generative AI, right? So we do want them to get that sort of foundational stuff, but we want them to think critically about it. So we look at tools for research, writing, and eventually image creation. We also ask students to think about issues that are, I think, dear and near to librarians, like copyright and ethical issues using these creation tools. The goal is always to be critically engaged. And we are not forcing it on them in any way or that we are AI evangelists. I know I'm certainly not. We frame it as a potential tool, but we want them to be able to see both sides of it. And then our final project, which I think we've discovered is really, really pretty interesting, is that to interrogate a particular generative AI tool. So we had most people use ChatGPT, though a couple used Gemini. And what we asked them to do is we actually asked them to create a bunch of prompts. We asked them to then revise those prompts, and then we asked them to do some lateral reading about what the generative AI created. The idea is to interrogate what the generative AI tool is good at, what it's not good at, and really work with it. So we had a number of students do really excellent lateral reading, but one in particular student really stood out. So they asked us, ChatGPT, to create a timeline with lots of details about the history of minimally invasive cardiac surgeries. So they posted their response in our final. It was very lengthy, and the student was able to find a number of things wrong with the response using lateral reading. For instance, ChatGPT suggested that someone named Dr. C. Walton Lillehei had done one of these minimally invasive responses and was a pioneer. But as our student wrote, quote, "I cannot find any articles regarding Dr. C. Walton Lillehei performing a minimally invasive procedure. He's best known for performing the first open heart procedure using cross-circulation. According to his biography, he died in 1999, which would be a very hard age to be still performing surgeries. Also, I found out that the first MICS KABG procedure was performed in 2005, not 1990. So he took what we taught him about using basic lateral reading techniques, fact-checking techniques, and was able to find 4 things that were not quite right about the response. It was really great to see. We also want them to engage their fellow students. So we ask them to view all their final projects and then comment on them. And I think it's really, really important that students see what their other fellows are doing. And I would love to build on this and look towards teaching a more comprehensive information ethics and bias in the age of generative AI course, but of course we have bandwidth issues. One thing that was really striking, and it came across in our final comments, in their final discussions, and in their course evaluations, was just how impactful learning about bias, ethics, and the environmental costs of generative AI are for students. I really think they just don't know. Most of them don't know about these issues, and it really helped them to understand how to critically and ethically engage with generative AI. We had numerous student comments, especially about environmental costs. And I think that's a really great way in. There's a lot of people worried about that stuff. And if we can start getting students to think critically about the environment around generative AI, it's really important. So we have 7 students enrolled for spring starting next week. We made a couple different changes, but we're really excited because this means that we as librarians are literally teaching the foundational course regarding AI at the university. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about lessons learned, and we're going to have some final thoughts. We each have a sort of a lessons learned thing, and then we'd love to answer questions, have a discussion about all this kind of stuff. So one of the things that we really want to make clear is that librarians have a strong case for leading, given our background in information literacy, because generative AI really poses an information literacy problem. And I want us to really don't be afraid to lead. We have these skill sets. We know what we're doing, and make it really clear. Make your voice heard. What it creates is information is at the heart of this, what generative AI creates, right? And how do we know what it creates is accurate? We do this work constantly. This is what librarians do. So let's apply it and really lead on that front. And then there's so many opportunities here to teach more durable research skills. And I think that is another way that librarians can exert our expertise and make our leadership really clear.
We also feel that partnerships, especially with general education, are vital. So librarians can have the most impact because we're not discipline specific, and general education can be a really great place to reach a large number of students and faculty from across the university. So our collaboration with the University Foundation's courses and instructors and administration is a great example. We're able to create that foundation in partnership with faculty from across the campus, and get students off on the right foot, or what we think is the right foot in terms of AI literacy at Boise State. Also, we're coming from a perspective where we have a lot of knowledge, like Anders said, about information literacy, about thinking critically about AI. And so we can be a balance to AI evangelists who might be like full steam ahead in their courses, and also those who are really skeptical about AI. So we see both ends of the spectrum in University Foundation's faculty. So we can be ideally a really balanced voice between those two camps and show multiple perspectives and introduce students to many different ways of thinking about this topic.
As you could tell from Anders' excitement when he was talking about our AI information literacy and U course, we have really enjoyed the opportunity to teach this 4-credit course. It's been a lot of fun. It has stretched us in really good ways, and it has taken a lot of our time as well. But we want to also emphasize that with the current emphasis on generative AI on college campuses, we think it's a great opportunity for librarians to take our toolboxes, our skills into new places and teach new 4-credit courses. And we would just encourage you to consider that or look for those opportunities, because we think it's been a great experience for us, and we think for the students as well. With the abundance of writing, research, and reporting on generative AI right now, I would add that it's not easy work and it does take a considerable amount of time. As one of our sociology faculty members put it, as teachers or librarians trying to use AI, there will be no dusting off of notes on this. We've got to keep doing it over and over again because it's going to continue to need to be changed.
So I'm going to end our presentation with a final thought. So I said I'm a Luddite at the beginning, and I thought I would end with some final thoughts on why I think this position is important for librarians in the age of generative AI. Because I think a lot of librarians are actually Luddites at heart. A Luddite is not someone who resists technological innovation. That's an absolute misnomer. As Brian Merchant wrote in his blog, Blood in the Machine, and his book is also pretty amazing if you haven't read it, quote, "The real Luddites who did not enjoy the right to vote or collectively bargain fought not against technology or the future, but those bosses who were using it to avoid long-standing laws and regulations, enable the hiring of child labor, and exploit skilled workers and drive down their wages," end quote. A Luddite is not someone who resists the exploitation of their labor or the loss of their ability to work to a technology without an equal seat at the table about the use of that technology. We in libraries always talk about making sure we have diverse collections, that we reflect our communities and their needs, and that we teach durable information literacy skills. And that we are a place where we resist that exploitation so common in the rest of society. This attitude of a seat at the table dovetails with the true Luddite philosophy. So librarians can and should lead on this. We at Boise State certainly are trying to, and we encourage you all to do the same. So we'd love to have some questions and we'll spend some time trying to answer them. Thank you all for listening.
While people are typing up their questions, this image, is it AI generated?
It is. It says so on the bottom. I created it. It was created with Adobe Firefly. Yeah. So Adobe Firefly, even though it does have some problems, they are the least objectionable, as far as I can tell, of the image generation software out there in terms of copyright and stuff like that.
We do have a question from Spencer.
Yeah.
If you taught undergrads one lesson that involved AI, what might that look like? We've thought about that quite a bit. Who wants to answer? Lizzie, you could talk about what we did if you want.
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about our module, the progression of our module. We did a brief introduction to what it is. Like I said, some positives and negatives. And then we introduced how we use lateral reading to fact check an AI generated response. And I think that is probably the most impactful for students to see and to experience, because they actually get it's an active learning experience where they can look at a response and they take the time to go through it and to fact check it, and they can see sometimes AI gets it right, sometimes it gets it bizarrely wrong. And so I think that's a really great learning experience for them. And we're actually developing that lesson plan into a recipe for the generative AI cookbook. Is that what it's called, for ACRL? So when that comes out, you'll see that lesson plan in there, and you're very welcome to use it. Please do in your own contexts.
And Deanna, yeah, so I would agree. One thing that I've found very helpful is getting other faculty members to to advocate for you, to have a bunch of voices that all say, hey, we need a critical engagement with this. I don't know what that looks like where you're at, but one of the things that most faculty members know is that it hallucinates and that there are lots of things that it makes up. And that's what librarians are really good at, is pointing that out, finding what the real version of that is. And I think that's a way in, because faculty instructors and researchers have often relied on librarians for research support in that way. And so it's kind of a natural way in. And the other thing is also just speak up. If you have the bandwidth, say you want to be part of it. Because I think sometimes we just don't speak and then we get ignored because does that help at all? I mean, really, I think it's about making sure that you try to, in some ways, kind of bull your way in. It's kind of weird, but that's sort of been the way it is.
We had a question about where our students in Library 140 came from. In the fall, we had 8 students, and I think 2 of them were one was a sophomore, one was a junior or senior, and I think one was a biology major, the other one was, Anders helped me, human resource management.
Yeah, human resource
like
management.
that. We also had another student who was, a mother with a couple of children doing online work. And I think she was leaning toward a computer science degree. But then the other 5 students were professionals, a woman in communications, a man who worked for Hewlett Packard, a man who worked for Idaho National Laboratory, a Boise State employee, and an advisor in a particular academic department. So really all over the place. And the students for fall, we haven't gotten introductions from them yet, so I don't know what their backgrounds are, but it looks like our students that we'll start with that are beginning the course soon, we have fewer professionals. I think we have 1 Boise State employee, but the rest of them look to be more like the typical or sophomore through senior students, but we don't know yet what their academic areas are.
We also had a question. What have faculty expressed to you about their needs for preparing their students for how different AI has made the information landscape nowadays? And I can say from my experience with our university foundations instructors, they really needed a place to start, honestly. I think they felt a lot, some of them have been very involved in like the committees that Anders has mentioned and the work that's happening on campus. But they felt like they needed to introduce students to a lot of the basics, like you said. I think a few people maybe mentioned it in the chat, and then Anders mentioned it, things like the environmental impact of generative AI, thinking beyond just what is it and what can it do, but also thinking about the greater context of what's going on. So that was something that they felt like they really needed. And then we also so when the instructors took the course, they completed the assignment or the quiz, and we did receive some feedback on lateral reading skills and how useful it was to fact check things. And so I think that they appreciated that as well.
Yeah, it's actually something we spend way more time than I thought with on our teaching and learning committee. We spend a lot of time thinking about what we can do to try to incentivize essentially everyone at the first and second year level trying to get their students to take the AI literacy and student success course, honestly. Because what we're finding that most instructors feel they need is they need to have their students, they need to feel like their students all have the same understanding of what generative AI is and isn't, and a baseline. And that's across both instructors, staff, everything. That's what we talk about a lot. Is how do we get people, because we have like our super users, right? And we have people who are sort of kind of know a little bit. Then we have a lot of people who don't know anything, or don't use it, or barely. And so how do we raise that baseline? Because what we've found, and what other people have found, is that students actually have a pretty interesting critical take on a lot of this stuff already. But it's not always the same. And so how do we kind of get that baseline there? That's what instructors really want. And I'm hopeful, we saw a big uptick in enrollment in the AI and student success course last year. We need to update it, obviously, but I do think that it is the kind of thing that is a really good tool. And then just talking with instructors, I mean, it's really different. That's the other thing, is across different disciplines, it is incredibly different. We have huge gulfs in terms of what instructors in history want versus instructors in mechanical engineering. And so how do we bridge those is an interesting sort of problem for all of us.
I'll just add to, through the micro course, we've seen examples of students using generative AI inappropriately. We have specific directions for an assignment there to ask them not to use it, because we're trying to see their own critical thinking. And when I talk to faculty about that, they're really interested to know about our experience with identifying it, because as Anders said, there's a lot of problems with the current detection tools. And so it's something that is, I think, even more challenging to figure out, in addition to just teaching about generative AI. It's how do you identify and deal with students when it's not used in an appropriate way? So that is another thing that they, that they want to engage with us in conversation about.
Do you guys see a parallel between the way Wikipedia was thought about in education initially, and then how that changed over time a little bit to what's happening in this AI space? I mean, there are big differentiators between the two, right? But
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent. I mean, I think both are fueled by a lack of understanding of what a particular thing is and isn't, and a lot of hype. So, there's a lot of hype around generative AI, right? And there are pretty incredible things it can do, but there's lots of things it can't. And same thing with Wikipedia, right? So like, it was just so I think in that way, yes, in a certain sense. I do wonder if generative AI, yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely different, because the people who aren't going to adopt generative AI or don't, integrity of information, you find out, I mean, so, okay. So y'all, I don't know if anybody does this kind of stuff, but I do. I have lots of news alerts set up, and there's even, and the Google, the Google AI thing, drives me nuts, drives me completely insane. But it's getting worse again. I don't know what they did, but they tweaked something and it got worse. But it's the cost of generating that, as somebody said in here, is a lot versus clicking on the Wikipedia. You know what I mean? Like, so it's, inaccurate information. I mean, this is where information literacy is so key, whether it's generative AI or Wikipedia or any of it, right? I mean, I've taught community groups about lateral reading and ideas. And basically, the biggest thing that I always try to emphasize is just pause for a second and check it out. Like, I know it's not easy to do all the time, but like, if you have any questions about whether it could be accurate, please just open that new tab, search for something, you know, you'll find out pretty quick. You know, ignore the AI thing at the top.
Yeah, and I think that's where we try to place the emphasis, not on whether the generative AI is good or bad, but on how to work with it responsibly, just like we want to teach responsible use of all kinds of information. And that's what we're hoping our faculty will pick up on. You know, whenever we hear our faculty talking about using lateral reading in their courses, that's just, you know, that makes our year. It's so exciting to know that they find that skill something that they can reinforce for us. And so that's where we try to place the emphasis rather than on whether it's good or not. And we do have to convince students even to use Wikipedia still to do some fact checking, but we want them to use more than that as well and interrogate all of the information that they encounter.
Awesome. Well, if folks have any more questions, feel free to type those in the chat. This has been super informative, super interesting, lots of stuff to think about. Can our attendees email you all if they have further questions? Getting a thumbs up. That's awesome.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, Annie, so that I can figure out how to share the slides in the
Sure.
chat. But yeah.
Yeah, if you want, you could email me the file itself and I'll
Okay. Yeah, actually, we'll do that. I'll just do
sure.
that.
That sounds great.
That's
Okay.
better. That's okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for attending today's webinar. I'm going to stop the recording.